slowly but surely, I'm making iterations on your intros. I'm adding
Yeah.
my own little fairy dust.
I mean, you joke about it, but at some point, I'm gonna be the one that has to sit back and just say nothing.
I feel like that was a ChatGPT 5 intro. Did you put that in
It
the new
wasn't.
model? Oh,
No.
really? You're still on 4.0?
Welcome to the show, where air takes the floor. Lee and Rich on the mic.
Welcome to the AI Guys podcast, where we make artificial intelligence easy to understand for everyone. I'm your host, Lee Dixon, and as always, I'm joined by the only data model I truly care about, Rich Swire. How you doing today, man?
Good. I'm actually a data supermodel now.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I see.
Super rich.
See, I'm
to fight
improving. I'm
super grok.
improving slowly but surely. I'm making iterations on your intros. I'm adding my own little fairy dust.
I mean, you joke about it, but at some point, I'm gonna be the one that has to sit back and just say nothing. At this point,
sorry.
you just let it ride.
I feel like that was a ChatGPT 5 intro. Did you put that in the
It
new
wasn't.
model?
No.
Oh, really? You're still on 4.0?
No, I handwrite all of those because I have to try to make them a little quippy.
Of course you do.
If not, they'd be really cheesy.
Oh,
I know people that just use it straight out of the can, and it's not good. So
yeah. Keep.
But I get a little flavor from it here and there.
Yeah,
It helps with our outlining.
Right on.
Well, today we are actually going to talk a little bit, not just about ChatGPT 5 and everything that's rolling out there, but a concept that we, allude to on couple different episodes. But I think we've really started to drill down where there's a disconnect inside of a lot of organizations and just, I think, a lot of ways that people just look at AI. So a graph that you kind of shared with our team internally over here at Rhea was really interesting because most of the time we're talking to anyone, whether it's friends, family, or clients, about what we do. They think, okay, I've got data. I put AI into it somehow, and then I get value from it. And with that, we kind of took it a little bit deeper to kind of break out that the AI section is really data science, which is not super sexy. And everyone kind of goes, I don't really know what that is. So I figured today we could talk a little bit about that missing middle piece and why there's so much maybe shadow and mystery behind it, and figure out why a lot of these projects fail before they start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we've kind of touched on it on a variety of episodes, talked about the, kind of the iceberg effect, right? What you see and feel as far as AI is just above the water, but what's really driving it is this massive mountain that you can't see. At a high level, I think the biggest educational process we go through when we're talking to our clients about deploying AI is a lot of what feels real simple, or that elegance that you have when you're talking to ChatGPT, which obviously spent millions, maybe close to billions of dollars training that kind of general model. It doesn't mean that it escapes the complexity of what you have to do for your own data, right? So like you go to a company and you're like, okay, now we're going to train AI models on your data. I wouldn't say you're starting from scratch, but you're basically starting from scratch because ChatGPT doesn't have access to that information. They have context that might matter.
And realistically, whatever you've been doing over the X amount of years that you've been doing it is not going to be made for AI to just use it out of the box anyways.
Yeah. And also we're just, at the end of the day, we're not really good at collecting data, and we're also not very good at maintaining that data. And that's kind of a critical starting point when you're developing an AI agent. It would be, as humans, we just happen to be more fluid. We kind of know where to find this information, or know who to ask is more likely the scenario where, AI obviously can't tap into our brain yet. So, we need to be able to regurgitate or at least curate all this information and provide it to AI on day one before it can even do anything. And so data science is all about gathering information, gathering data. And even though the output feels very much like language, right? You're talking to ChatGPT like you're talking to a person. It's still mathematically driven, and it still requires a ton of data to get to that point. In fact, that's the premise of the entirety of the paper that Google wrote around, attention is everything, is that the more data you give these things, the more eloquent it sounds and is able to talk. And I think it's no different when you're talking about a company. Companies that come to us and they give us a small amount of data, or that data might be a little bit discombobulated or not in a good format or whatever it might be. There's a significant amount of work to get it to the point where AI can actually use that in an efficient way. And then on the opposite side, it doesn't stop with the training. It also stops with the inference, right? So now you have to also think of it like, what do you want to ask this thing? Like,
how is it going to reference?
Yeah, because I might train it on let's just say we record and have transcripts of all of your company meetings. Let's just say we train the AI on that. And then the first person goes into the AI and the first question is, oh, what was our financials last month? It's like, well, this AI sucks because it doesn't know that our financials. I thought you trained this thing. You're like, we did train it on all your meetings in which you didn't really talk about financials. And, it wasn't. So it's almost like this aha moment that people have to have is like, oh, so it isn't magic. It just doesn't magically know everything in the ether. I actually have to teach it, which seems a little bit cart and horse problem, right? It's like, what's the point of teaching this thing if I already have all this documentation, I already have it all.
Yeah.
Why do I need this AI? Of course, what they miss there is the AI does an amazing job of taking volumes and volumes of information and making it useful,
infinitely scalable too.
Right. And then and then have that information scalable, like you said, yeah, exactly, to all your employees, all your customers, et cetera. But that road is difficult to even just explain to somebody. And then also that's why there's so much inertia and a lot of failed projects is because they skip that point. Honestly, a lot of people just throw up an FAQ document into some sort of chat bot and be like, oh, this is so cool. But then they go, wow, it really sucks. Actually, it's like, oh, it's cool because it's working. And then they're like, and the customers get on there and they start asking questions, really good questions about the products or services or whatever it might be. And the agent just starts failing. It starts, I don't know the answer. And they're like, why? It's like, well, you didn't train it. And that's obviously where we spend a lot of our energy and time.
Yeah. Well, there's two things I think you pointed out that I want to dive into, and we can separate them just so they're not just all one long run-on sentence. But I do think the middle is where a majority of the work on projects, at least that we do, tend to be, just making sure that what is coming in is clean, normalized, making sure that the engineering behind the AI and the framework and the workflows and everything is working in together in one cohesive solution. But another thing too, when we're talking about this like workload issues, I do think there's a lot of day-to-day pieces that is invisible to leaderships or sometimes key figureheads on these projects. So like you said, they come in with this idea of what they want to build. We say absolutely, or, they're taking it on internally, trying to build it. And then they get to a first marker, like a plateau where they say, hey, I've done all this work, ready for you to test it. And they come in either, with skipping over like steps that should have been there, right? Or going after under-resourced stages of the training. And then, they do get a little bit of maybe fear, uncertainty, and doubt there. So, do you feel like let's take us out of the AI, worker position and put us more in a buyer of this. Do you feel like there would be a better solution if clients came in understanding that they're investing into the middle a lot more than just swiping a credit card and, project is magically going to appear? Or do you think there needs to be a little bit more quality control with whoever is going to be the main people training this? Or is it maybe a combination of both?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with, the general rules, kind of the Newton's law of AI, the top three laws. The first law of AI is what you put in is what you get out.
We're going to call this Rich's AI laws.
Yeah. I mean,
the first law.
Yeah. I kind of consider myself an Isaac Newton-esque character.
Yeah.
I think we have the same kind of like birthday, maybe. I don't know, something. We have something in common.
both people that exist.
I'll find some reason to compare myself to
next episode. We'll start pulling out the
minds of all time. But yeah, I'll find it. It's somewhere in there. But I'll ask ChatGPT 5. No.
There you go.
I think, first rule of Fight Club is, what you put in is what you get out. So a lot of times the amount of work it requires to collect enough information and to know what kind of information to collect. And also there's, what kind of information do you want to share? Whether because proprietary or whatever it might be, because you don't really know what it's going to, be exposed to is like number one. Right. And so, and I mentioned this earlier in the pod was like, you can't put in A and then ask a question about B. So there is definitely a scope challenge, just like in any software product or project or any project for that matter.
Yeah.
You want to create a scope that's reasonable, that's going to get you the output you want, the outcome you want. And you don't have to eat the whole elephant. If you want to just train your AI on your project documents and then expose that to your project team to be more efficient. It doesn't mean you have to include everything, just include the things that they're going to ask about. And then just communicate to your team, hey guys, this AI is trained on these kind of documents. So
right.
that's where you use it, right?
It's all iterative. Like, here's the phase that we're at. This is the stuff it knows.
Yeah, I think a phased, more iterative approach to AI is the right approach. And typically the right approach to any sort of tech implementation, quite honestly. I think we've gotten sold on this. I think we've gotten sold over the last 20 years on these big, massive tech movement type projects. You know, oh, we're gonna implement Salesforce. Here it comes, by the way. We're gonna implement Salesforce. It's gonna change our business for the best, and it's only gonna cost us $250,000. It's gonna take 3 years, but trust me, at the end of this, it's gonna be so efficient. And then after the end of 3 years, everybody hates it. Nobody uses it because they didn't do it iteratively,
and it didn't cost $250,000.
And it's all or none with these kind of SaaS products. So with AI, you do have the benefit of being iterative, right? You can train it in layers, and you also you can build out multiple AI agents. It's more distributed architecture than it is like one monolithic investment. So that's number one. So you don't have to put a lot of money on the table and bet it all in black and hope it comes out. You can really make smart investments and get real quick ROI. And I think rule number two, when it comes to that inertia that you're talking about in the middle, is that I do think that there is this natural inclination that training AI is like something anybody can do, right? Like they're like, oh, hey, we're thinking about launching an AI for support. Okay, cool. Well, Jim's got nothing better going on, so maybe we'll tell Jim, put his data scientist hat on all of a sudden, and Jim might have done, like, maybe he's the guy who installed, intercom or something, and they're just like, oh, he's in the support team and he's kind of technical. He knows how to uninstall Windows.
He gives everyone the laptop that has their cloud operating service. So like, let's go.
And I think the bottom line is this is data science. This is not like, even though AI, and there's a lot of tools out there, including the tools that we sell, that make things a lot easier, and certainly can expose some really powerful functionality to people that aren't as technical as like data scientists should be. But it is data science, which means there's this knowledge that you have to understand how vector stores work. How do you best embed this information? How do you chunk your data? How do you prepare your data for this kind of stuff? And there's a lot of nuance to it, because the output will be determined by, again, how you format your information and how you collect it and how you gather it. And then ongoing, how do you minimize hallucinations? How do you allow for AI agents to learn? Where's the reinforcement learning coming in? Because ultimately, I think when you launch AI, it might know 50 to 60% of what it needs to know to do the job that you think it's going to do. But the other 40% is going to come through using it, right? Through reinforcement learning, through people actually asking it questions, and you actually going in there and grading the AI and educating the AI on the answers.
Yeah.
And we've been
evaluation is a huge piece that I think is overlooked. It's so much more than just picking a model and saying like, okay, we've done our piece now.
And you can do some of that through back testing. Like you can take, like in a support agent, for example, you can go back and take the last 1,000 tickets and then run it through the AI and say, hey, how did it do? And certainly that real world data will make it make it way better than it without it.
Sure.
But you still have to, use it, right, to make it work, right? And so that would be my second law of Richtonian AI.
There it is.
What is being used is getting better, right? AI is there's a reason why OpenAI is the leader, and it's not because they have better chips, because everybody uses the same chips. It's not because they're smarter, even though you could argue their data scientists are pretty smart, but so are the other ones, that all the other models. The real big advantage for OpenAI right now is they have 100 million daily active users, just absolutely feeding that AI ridiculous amount of information and putting it to its test. That is it. That is the secret weapon. And I know other models might start to ingest at that level, but that kind of input into AI and that human feedback and the reinforcement learning is their secret sauce, right? And that's ultimately what is gonna make them kind of continue to be the leader until somebody comes along and matches that type of volume. And then back to your I'll let you go up to the second point, but like, as we continue to talk about where the inertia is, a lot of it is just in the human side, right? That's the best way I could summarize it. It's not AI necessarily because that is primarily mathematically driven. It's very quantitative, very functional, very common sense oriented. But like
Yeah.
humans try to do things a little bit differently. They try to do things as humans would.
Yeah. And we all assume that we know best too, because that's just unfortunately our mentality.
You have to take your hat off, and it's okay to think like a human and think on what a human wants as far as an outcome.
Sure.
But don't think that AI is going to consider the human way of doing things the best way of doing things. And that, my friends, is my third law of AI, is that is that don't judge AI because it's not being human, right? In the sense of like, don't judge it by the same parameters, because the reality is that, you know, the way that we think and the way that we kind of determine success in many cases doesn't necessarily mean that it's the way that mathematics and, you know, or AI would determine that as a success as well. So the outcome side of things, you know, if you're trying to manipulate AI to be more human, then expect to put a lot more energy into making that AI act like you. And that's, you know, and then if you succeed in doing that at some level, you know, now you understand how complicated it is to think about things like AGI or artificial general intelligence, because that is the definition of AGI. And don't expect ChatGPT or any other tool to even come close to what and how a human would behave or act or think.
Right.
It would only mimic you at best. In some cases, I think people misunderstand mimicry as, oh, it's thinking like a human now. And then, of course, when they go to deploy AI and they actually deploy it in their own silo and it doesn't behave that way because it has been trained, they go, oh, this AI sucks. It doesn't talk like a human at all. It just sounds like it's regurgitating information. And you're like, yeah, that's because it's not a human. It's just,
and also how you've trained it is to, like, you haven't given it restrictions. You have just
exactly,
you know, you just like you're sitting there job shadowing somebody. So if I wanted someone to do this podcast with you, I would say go listen to episodes, but I'd also, you know, be like, just like have a conversation with me, see how I carry myself, how I talk, and just try to, again, imitate that. When someone gives a large swath of data to a computer model and then says, you know, I want you to do it this way, it's going to regurgitate that in the most efficient way possible. And sometimes that means an entire article's worth of information when you might have only needed one line out of that article. So if you haven't taught it anything and you expect it to think as a human and use common sense, like to your point, nothing is there yet, and nothing seems like it's going to be there for the foreseeable future. It's an extremely powerful tool, but it is not a replacement for a human by any means, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's strong where we're weak, you know, and we're strong where it's weak. It very much is a symbiosis, if you will. You know, the human plus AI, which we've talked about in past episodes, is really the magic combination right now. And I don't think in the foreseeable future that combination is going to deteriorate, you know, because there is something extraordinarily unique about how our brain works. And by default, we are also limited by, you know, how our brain works. So I don't know if there's going to be anytime soon an example where AI would beat out human plus AI, you know?
Right.
Certainly there's a lot
outside of a technical skill, like we've seen the things with the Olympian mathematics and coding.
But still, it's human plus AI. So if it's the same AI and a human's in front of it kind of guiding it, just because we are so much more intuitive and innovative and we have more context to things in a way that
in a real world application,
just in a way that AI may not have familiarity with yet. Again, I'm not saying forever, but I'm definitely saying that it's going to be a long time before AI supersedes human plus AI. But that being said, you know, you put AI against a human for certain tasks, it'll blow your mind. You know, if you say, oh, evaluate this 1,000-page document and it comes back with a summary in 30 seconds. Yeah. Humans can't even come close to that. Just like a calculator back in the, you know, 20th century, right? It's like mind blowing, right?
The assassin of the abacus.
Yeah, right? Exactly. But I mean, that doesn't mean that the output of that AI is going to be useful, you know, to anybody other than that AI, unless a human can take that, interpret it, and make the decision they're looking to make with that information.
Sure.
You know, and I did this post on LinkedIn about it, which is, I think a lot of people misunderstand what's actually happening. You know, they think that there's this like, it's us versus them. It's like humans versus AI, and AI is going to somehow permeate through our lives, you know, at the middle of the night, you know, and then we're going to wake up tomorrow and suddenly everything's going to be controlled by AI. And that's just not how it's going down. How it's going down is we actually are seeing a tremendous amount of utility in this tool. We're all using it to generate and to decipher content and to create applications, to create music and do all this cool creative stuff. And by the nature of that, AI is becoming a very integrated part of our lives because humans are allowing it to become that part. Whether you kind of put that in the label of scary or cool or exciting is kind of irrespective to the point that I'm trying to make, which is we are leading AI into becoming what it is. We are the shepherd of that. Now, you could argue that AI is using us as a tool, but it's like the tail wagging the dog. But the reality is that it is a cycle. We're creating a tool, and that tool is being used by us, and then it's repeat and rinse and repeat, right? Yeah. And we go, wow, this tool would be a lot cooler if it did this, and then we go back to our AI architecture, we make some changes, and then we spit out another model or spin out another app. And the innovation cycle right now is like 100x what it was a few years ago. Yeah. And so anybody who tries to pretend to predict what's going to happen in 5 years is just, I just don't think they have any sort of, I don't think there's ever been an event like this that there could be anywhere near an accurate depiction of what the universe is going to look like in 5, 10, 20 years, just because of the rapidness of what's being created right now at scale. That's quite honestly very exciting and world changing, but it will probably go a lot slower than we think because of the point we're trying to make in this episode, which is we're still human and we still control the gates of adoption, and we still control the gates of how we use this thing and how often we use it. And there's other factors too: cost, time, energy. But these all things kind of settle, I think, in the next 5 to 10 years, where we start to figure out how to make it work.
Absolutely. One other thing to touch on, and then we can kind of wrap it up here. When we're talking about the middle and where a lot of these projects kind of start to fail, we talk about the amount of work that's typically done in this middle space, right? Let's say anywhere between like 60-80% typically. I do think a part of the conversation that's sometimes lost, especially when you have a company that's interested in maybe being hands-on or has done some things with AI, and budget becomes maybe a little bit of a false flag for a lot of businesses. Like, they look at it as either they've gone through things like a Salesforce that they've invested a lot of money into and that they don't see value on in the end. So like, do we really need to invest the time or the energy now? Not to say that deploying AI needs to cost what Salesforce does, but there needs to be an investment conversation that's taking place, not just a typical SaaS or I'm buying a point solution. So do you feel that, with previous large tech deployments, do you think that's set a precedent and a bad experience when something like this that kind of revolutionizes the space comes along? Or do you think it's the other side of that, which is more AI seems extremely easy and accessible because of consumer models like ChatGPT and Gemini, where people go like, oh, I should be able to spin up something for $500 that absolutely changes my business? Like, is it just the bell curve is so wide, or that, again, people just don't understand that you're kind of investing in a digital workforce, and that again takes time and money and energy that is not going to happen just on one day?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. You have two kind of like levers that we're pulling here. One is, and I'll start with the latter that you mentioned. One is the fact that it's very early, right? And
we're still super
people
early.
Are in the tool phase, right? We're in the bronze age of AI, where they're using tools, right? And the hammer and the pick is ChatGPT, and they're still,
and everything is nails to people, right? So you get the hammer and just banging on everything,
and they're still getting to know it, right? It changes, it's getting better, and you're using it in their day to day. This is what needs to happen. This is mass adoption at its finest, but it doesn't necessarily translate to enterprise. It doesn't translate to autonomous agents. It doesn't translate into like work, really big shift work oriented AI solutions. What it does is it enhances the human's capability of delivering what they normally would deliver in a tenth of the time, which is extraordinarily valuable. The first thing every company should do is educate their employees on how to use these tools. Prompt engineering, ChatGPT, whatever tool that they choose, and that will absolutely accelerate quite a bit of the promise of what AI can deliver. However, the limitation there is that it is distributed. It's only going to be as good as the employee makes it.
That's using it.
It uses it exactly like in Excel. Like, I can give Excel to somebody and they go, "Oh, I could I could build a whole 10-year financial plan for a publicly traded company on this and deliver it to the SEC. And then other people look at Excel and go, I could barely get 2 cells to add. Like
I'm going to do my monthly budget.
Yeah. Or I can barely get, I don't understand how to, so a tool is a tool, right? And it has limitations depending on who you're working with. But
sure.
And on the other side of your point, which is, I do think that we've been businesses, which is more relevant to that conversation, have kind of been sold this idea that implementing technology and building silos and building these and creating these kind of the ecosystem that SaaS has created has been actually a fruitful endeavor. And I would argue that it hasn't, I think you're not
going to look on the other side and say, like, I'm really glad we did all this. When
at
really
a minimum,
not.
Sure, maybe it's better than paper, right? Like maybe it's better than shuffling papers around. But the reality is that there's very few SaaS products I look at and people and companies are using that actually deliver on the efficiency and the return on investment that they expected. Now, there are some exceptions to the rule for sure. But I mean, I think a majority, especially the bigger they are, the worse they get. And the proof of that is I guarantee you that most of the jobs that are happening or all the work that's being done is what they're doing is they're exporting it out of these SaaS products and putting it in Excel or Google Sheets, and they're just manipulating data that way, or they're pulling it off and they're, so like the problem is, I think most people are just like, these tools are more work.
Yeah, they're sour taste from what they've already seen.
So it's like we put a ton of information in there, and maybe there's some magical report that spits out that they paid somebody to build out for them that goes up to corporate that allows them to, or goes up to the CEO and he can see something. But the return on investment for the edge for the people that are actually using the tool is very minimal, right? But so that being said, is that now, and of course, a lot of companies have been investing for the last 10, 20 years building those things, and probably more so in the last 5 than the last 20. So they're just getting over this. They're hung over. They just went out, drank a 6-pack and then said they were going to go home and get an early night. And then they drank a bottle of Jack. And then they said, well, this is it. That's the last thing. And then they, went nuts, did a bump of Coke. And next thing you know, they wake up the next morning, their bank account's empty. and they have, and all they have to show for it is
Salesforce.
Was a really shitty UI on Salesforce. Right. And so, I mean, I think but then they're pot committed at that point. And then nobody wants to go through that. So when they hear this, now they're like, oh God, some guy's knocking on our door talking about AI now.
Yeah,
and they're like,
shell shocked from the
last
time.
Oh my God, what's this going to cost us? Right. Because it's even more of a black box. Right.
Yeah.
Even worse is Salesforce is in there trying to sell them AI, which is probably the last person you want to buy AI from. Right. So, at the end of the day,
we hit our Salesforce quota on this episode. I'm proud of it.
Yeah. Our SEO for Salesforce pod is probably like right next to theirs.
Oh man.
Someday they're going to sponsor us, and then I'll talk nice about them. But until then, no, I'm going to tell the truth. The people want to know. But I think it's a combination of those two things. From a spend, from a budget perspective, I don't know if, and this is obviously very coming from I'm playing my book here, and it's obviously I'm biased, but there's absolutely no place other than AI I would be investing in when it comes to a business.
Yeah, if you got R&D budget and that's what you've had a product that has been sitting stagnant or going through some version updates and stuff, and you're trying to figure out where the next actual movement is going to take place, like it needs to be an R&D and it needs to be figuring out how to use AI first. Yeah,
and don't think about AI as like an app or AI as a tool necessarily, even though obviously it comes in those forms. But think about AI as like the great accelerator of your business. So your people are sitting there, and you're getting 60 to 70% efficiency out of your people. Why? Information isn't organized well. They don't have access at their fingertips to very quality information they can make real key decisions on. They don't have the ability to communicate at scale from a sales and support perspective. Like literally everything that's capping humans at 60, 70% capacity is answered by AI if you deploy out agentic networks and you start to say, oh, hey, support team, here you go. Boom. Now you got 30, 40, 50% of your day back. Now let's make some moves. Let's grow. Let's build. Right. And the cost to do that is much less than having to hire more humans. Because the thing is that most CEOs and most executives don't understand is throwing more humans at the problem doesn't solve the problem, because it's a human capacity issue from a capability. It's not a human capacity problem because, oh, I need more people because these 3 people are overworked. Just by adding 4th and 5th, you don't get that lift, because you're not really helping everybody. You might be taking a little bit of work off Sally, a little bit of work off John. But the reality is it all reverts back to the mean. All it means is that you took 10% from 5 people, and those other 5 people are working 10% less because they're still capped. You haven't removed the glass ceiling of our human brain and unlocked the ability for those people to go and capture more value for your business. And the only answer to that is AI. It certainly isn't logging onto a CRM and updating a database. And it certainly isn't any other investments that you might be potentially making, like human resources, hiring more people. I mean, none of that is going to get you that 10x lift that you need in a meaningful way. And that's of course why why we obviously sit here on a pod and talk about the best investment you can make personally or professionally. And also if you own a company or part of a company, even if you're an employee of the company and you don't feel like you're making decisions, pushing upward and saying, hey, we need to get some sort of agentic solution down here to help me with A, B, and C, so that I can open up capacity and I can start doing some really cool stuff. It needs to come from the bottom up, and also needs to be, obviously discussed from top down. But, understand, and I guess this is the point of this episode, is that it is a journey, right? It's exciting in the beginning, like all technology is, right? You might spin up a cool demo, you might even get a cool demo, and you're like, oh my God, this is going to change the world. This is amazing. And they're like, all right, let's go live and let's go build this. And they go, oh, and then realization kicks in, right? Of, okay, I got to do all this work. There is a lot of heavy lifting to get this AI to where I want it to be. But then at the end of that rainbow is like, boom, I've created the smartest person in the room. It knows everything it needs to know. And then now I can put that to use in multitude of ways that's going to get me the ROI that I was expecting. So, that hill to climb, is somewhat a tough one to convince your team to go over another hill after you just sold them on the last tech investment that you made. But I do think that if you could showcase what they're going to get long term, that it's going to automate work, it's going to take work away from them, not add more work to their plate, and they're actually going to they're going to receive more value than what they have to give the system. That's unlike SaaS products or unlike any other technology innovation that's happened, in the last 100 years, is that this is for the first time, it's balanced the other way. You just look at ChatGPT is a great example. I put in one sentence as a prompt and it unlocks paragraphs, volumes of information back. Right. Yeah. And that behavior you can translate to the agentic side as well. And I think that's the great unlock of AI for businesses.
It's good stuff, man. And for everyone else listening, thanks again for joining us on this episode. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button to stay in touch. Also, check out our Substack for more content, which will be linked to this episode to continue this discussion. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care, everyone.
Welcome to the show, where AI takes the floor.